Looks like we're ready to go. I just can't thank enough the youth from Young Voices for it just basically hitting that ball out of the park. And if we can have another, I have had the pleasure of working with them for months now with Caroline Kiston, and they are so thoughtful, they're so smart. I know they give us all hope for our future, and just such a bright spot in terms of our youth and our future. Speaking of which, I have a really exciting opportunity to introduce a leader who is leading the way, Marco Lima. Marco Lima is an advocate born and raised in Rhode Island. He currently attends Brown University and is concentrating in public health and Africana studies. His advocacy began during the pandemic after seeing the inequities faced by many. Afterwards, he focused on research, public policy, and creating solutions alongside organizations such as New Deal for Youth, Young Voices, and Every Hour Counts. More recently, he has worked on advocacy around youth well-being at the federal level. His efforts are grounded in the goal of creating a more equitable society for all BIPOC individuals. In doing so, he strives to lift up the voices and knowledge of youth who are experiencing challenges as a byproduct of racism. I got to know Marco because Paige Colossus-Parks, who is the director of Rhode Island Kids Count, and my office were next to each other when I was the director of Rhode Island Kids Count. And Marco was an intern for Paige. And I would see him come every week, sit down with Paige, and they would just be having the best time next door that I would want to go in and join them. But Marco has been such a leader in Young Voices, this fantastic organization that you have witnessed today. And he also was the speaker at the 2023 Rhode Island Kids Count Fact Book Breakfast. He was the keynote. And so it is my pleasure to welcome Marco Lima to the stage. He is going to take a deep dive on algorithms.
Thank you. I thought there was a mic there. So I'm going to stand here kind of awkwardly just because, as you can see, the panel is already set up for our next time. So what we're really going to cover today is what the TikTok algorithm actually looks like. I know we've kind of already thrown around this word of algorithm and what social media looks like for youth, but I really want y'all to get a little taste of what it looks like in case you haven't engaged on the app yourselves. That being said, here's a little bit more about Young Voices. This is the blurb off their website, and I'm going to take this time to talk about myself. Very modest. But so, including the work, I was a panelist on well-being for the White House Youth Policy Summit in 2024. I've attended the National Association for Medicaid Directors and really talked about well-being and access to well-being, specifically in mental health for young people. And I've also done survey works in Rhode Island to really engage youth on out-of-school time and what that looks like for them. And once again, this project is with Young Voices and Hassenfeld. Going ahead of myself. That being said, what is social media? What counts as social media? Who's on it? How accessible is it? Why use it? And we're going to go over some key terms as well. These are important questions while we have this discussion. So for me, what counts as social media is really Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Reddit, and X, formerly known as Twitter. And this is highly personal. I know some youth talked about Pinterest being a source of social media. I think for my grandmother, it would be WhatsApp and Facebook. For my mom, it's Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook, maybe even Messenger. So it really depends what age group you're talking about, and the access and what they're viewing is also going to be incredibly different. Now, who's on it? This can be really anyone. We started talking about this earlier today, but there is no regulation on age. So while yes, most applications say you have to be 16 or up or 13 or up to join the app, anyone can lie. I know when I first created some of my accounts, I said that I was 20 and like born in, I don't know, like 1999 or something. Now, that wasn't really true at the time, and now I have to go back and change it to edit to my actual age. But there's like situations where that happens, and a lot of middle schoolers join on early, and they have access to all this information. And like we mentioned earlier, the technology does not know what is age appropriate or what age means. So how accessible is it? In terms of accessibility, I really wanted to focus on disabilities and also language access. As one of the youth already mentioned, TikTok and multiple applications are used for language acquisition and are a way to connect with populations that you normally wouldn't. For example, like Netflix, I know that's not necessarily a social media app, but you can switch the language. Same with TikTok, same with Facebook, Instagram as well. And that being said, there's also resources for those that are disabled. For example, closed captions, read aloud features for those that are visually impaired, and then once again, just translation features. We mentioned Roblox earlier, so I'm gonna take the opportunity to mention it again. Roblox apparently has this feature that'll translate into any language that is supported by the website. So that means that someone that speaks, who's monolingually a Spanish speaker can also communicate with an English speaker. So there's multiple ways that we connect, but there's a risk for young people if they're connecting with everyone or anyone worldwide. Now, why use it? Some of the youth already talked about this. For me personally, it's that connection aspect that's really important, and it allows us to explore new cultures, new beliefs, even like what's happening worldwide. So there's a lot of global issues that are going on right now, and one of the ways that I've been able to see both sides of those situations is by connecting with some of the people on the ground floor and really experiencing the issues. So seeing images, seeing videos has really allowed me to open up my perspectives. And then lastly, some key terms. Algorithm is really the way social media apps are programmed to present content to users. So this is very dependent on the application. I know some of the youth, once again, were talking about how the algorithm is slow, and I would say that stands true for Instagram. However, for applications such as Pinterest and TikTok, they're designed to work quicker. So I know for myself, once I search up, say like vintage houses on Pinterest, that's the only thing I'll get for the next couple of days until I do another search of like, say, green shirts or like formal outfits to wear to a conference, for example. Then they'll switch up. And same with TikTok. During Hurricane Milton, that was the only thing that was on my feed, different examples of what was happening, ways that people were not listening to the messages that were being sent out by their government, and then also ways that people were and how crazy it was to go on the highway and escape your state. So that being said, I really wanted to focus on someone that isn't me, and I made a persona called who I named Genesis. Now, this is not a picture of her. However, this is her favorite animal, at least in my mind, a sloth, and she is from Providence, Rhode Island, specifically Broad Street, which is very well known for its Hispanic population and a center for Hispanic culture. She is age 15, 9th grade, so just entering high school. Once again, Hispanic, specifically Guatemalan. Once again, trying to insert myself wherever I can. And her interests are really animals, the arts, and anything to do with the ocean. She's really curious about animal facts, as is her interest, how to survive high school, because there's some of that anxiety around it, and then mental health. So she's suffering with depression or symptoms of it, maybe doesn't know what that means for her just yet. That being said, when we still learning how to use it. When I opened up the application for this new account, I did it on my tablet so it wouldn't be affected by any data or searches that I used on my phone or computer. So this is really its isolated case study, at least I'll say. And I did this for about 2-3 weeks, spending at least 5 to 10 hours per week on TikTok. So it was more than I wanted. And my homework did not appreciate that. But as I opened the application, it first allowed me to put my username, an email, all of those nitty-bitty stuff, my age. I think for this one, I did put that I was 15, and it allowed me to do that, which was something that I found interesting. But I was allowed to choose animals, the arts, science and education, because she's still in that experimental stage of like finding out what she wants, and then DIY. So if she's an artist, she wants to do things herself. And this was the very opening. Now, immediately after that, I started getting examples of like what she would see. Now the audio is not working, but it's honestly fine because it's just the sloth making its little like chirping noises. But as you can see, I just got a video of an animal, exactly what I wanted, exactly what should have been given. And there you go, in case you want to see more of that. And then the next video was also, let's see if it wants to listen. Oh. Okay, technical errors were expected. Theo, do you mind going back? Or Dr. Kiston? Okay. I think we're just gonna have to do it manually. Oh. Okay, wait, it's back. So this one is also about animals, red pandas. So what I found interesting about this one is that it was, from the looks of it, in a different country. So it was showing me content worldwide, and that's something that I think is a strong benefit, but it can be sort of worrisome, as you'll see later on. Also, thank you for tech, for working behind the scenes. Okay. Okay, I wish I could pause from here, but I can't. And honestly, it did it for me. So as you can see, I don't have anything against Elsa or Donald Duck, but it just wasn't my interest, at least not with what Genesis wanted to see. So I was allowed to do the not interested button, and it works really quickly. It just removes it off my feed. Now, what I did find in this specific instance is that it showed me less Disney-related content afterwards, or at least like Disney X, like wherever that was. But what you can see just from this miniature scroll is that it does show content that I want to see. It showed me the arts, it showed me the ocean, it showed me animals, and then at moments it combined all three with specifically the carousel in New York. So it's really refining my interest and showing me exactly what I want to see. That being said, there is some things initially when there is no algorithm that is just random. It's trying to figure out what you want to see. And the reason why I pose this as a concern is because it allows students to see things that may be politically leaning either left or right, but it doesn't allow them to formulate their own opinions if that's their initial thing. So while yes, they can like it and they'll see more, if they're initially just getting one side, that's the only side they're gonna listen to. And we'll see that in a second.
The lead people. These are people who come into your life just for a season. They are there to take what they need. And as soon as it gets cold or a wind blows in your life, they are gone.
Okay, with this example specifically, I wanna both mention the threat of AI, because this is not President Trump speaking, or at least I don't think he has ever said this in an interview. But if a student is seeing this, they're gonna believe it's him. There's not really enough like analysis or like a video of him saying this to really read lip patterns or to read his posture, anything like that to assume that it is him actually saying these words. So you can very well go to your family and say, look, Mom, look what President Trump said, like, we should vote for him in this election. Now, I know the election has passed, but still, this is a way that TikTok and specifically algorithms do impact elections, which is important, but then they also impact youth's political views. Because if they're seeing this in a non-political setting, they can go in and find that specific person more and assume that they'll agree with him because of his stance on other issues. And then likewise, the threat of AI is one of the most important things to worry about, because this can be done to harm him as well, or harm anyone else for that matter. It could very easily be done with like slurs or negative content where someone posts that and then says, look what someone said. And once again, no picture, so you can't read the shadows, you can't really see the misinformation that's being placed for you. So what really changed is that once I started liking more content, I got more political content. Once again, this is an election year, so I do understand that it was different because of that. Both sides were posting a lot, and they were pushing out to younger voters. So likewise, TikTok didn't know my age specifically, or like didn't understand my age, so it was showing me it anyways. And then also with specifically Kamala Harris's approach of using the meme format to do political content, that was sort of flooding my page as well, because it was in the format of other memes that I liked or other videos that I liked. But then I also got reactions to political, social, and culturally relevant events and content in general. So for example, Hurricane Milton, a lot of that during that time, but I saw it with my interests. So for example, during that week when there was massive floods, I saw a lot of animals that were harmed during that time, and how humans were trying to help out like the animals that were harmed. So for example, I think there was a video of a person on a raft saving a dog in Mexico that was flooding, or like in a flooded area. So there's moments like that, once again with the election, that's really important. But then vernacular also starts to form, with a trend not too long ago being, I think one of the youth tried to mention it, but like very demure. And what does it mean to be like very demure and very mindful of your approaches while you're in spaces? But there's other ones like Riz and like all these certain topics that come up, but students are reposting it and reseeing it. So it changes even the way we structure our conversations. Once again, refined interests. So I started to see, at one point, all my For You page was arts and crafts, but specifically how to make like cardboard whales, jellyfish, like all these different animals, and how to really do it yourself. So in a way, it could be inspirational to youth as well. I got less need to block or skip people as I went on and as I saw more things I liked. So there is that addictive quality starting to form. And then smaller profiles joined my page. And the reason why I outline this is because it can create an issue for younger students if they do want to reach out to that person. And if you're only getting 5 likes on a video and someone reaches out, the likelihood of you responding is a lot higher. However, in my TikTok especially, I got mostly 50K and under likes. So not enough to have that individual fan base interaction. However, it was like there is that possibility still. And on my personal account, I do see more of that really smaller creators. And I do want to say all this is a net neutral. I know we've been talking a lot about the harms, but there is a lot of benefits. Specifically for queer youth, this is a space where they can find solace and community and learn about their identities in a way that isn't harmful or needing to put a label on themselves early on. So while we can say, yes, there is known harms, we also can't remove social media, not just because youth will find a way around it, but because it does provide benefits. That being said, we're gonna shift from the silly and go a little bit more deep. Because I mentioned earlier, Genesis does struggle with mental illnesses or symptoms of them. She was becoming curious, and she knew that she can search up things on TikTok. So because of this, she searched up keywords like depression, anxiety, suicide, and what that came up, we'll kind of go over. There's no videos because I did not want to include that for this setting. However, if you do need to take space, I encourage you to do so. So that being said, when I did search up depression, TikTok instantly gave me a disclaimer, and that came up before I could even see the videos. It is a small banner, which is more of a site issue, I would say, and we can get into the aesthetics of everything later on. But you can still see that there's two videos. One on the left saying, it's like when one single bad thing happens, I get in these depressive episodes that take months to get out of. And that one, I didn't watch it. However, it is there. I'm pretty sure it was still that sad content with no kind of hopeful ending. And then the one on the right, I'm the worst nightmare. I also didn't watch that. So I don't know what it says. However, as you can see on the bottom with the caption, it says depression core. Core, at least for young people, is really just saying the aesthetic. So like depression aesthetic, if you will. But going back to the disclaimer, it says, everyone's mental health story is unique. Empower yourself by learning about depression from trusted sources. So initially, it's kind of telling you, we can't help you. Like, we're not the people to do so. There are medical professionals on TikTok. However, most of them do start off with the same sentence. Like, we're not licensed to give you that professional advice over TikTok. Like, that's not how mental health works. That's not how it ever work, at least in the US. But yeah, so it does give you these disclaimers. Now here's a close-up when you click on it. I'm sorry that it looks a little blurry. I don't know why I did this, but it says, depression information. Authentic mental health stories shared by our diverse TikTok community can be a source of insight and support. You may find yourself wanting to learn more about conditions like depression and how they can affect school, work, health, or relationships. Remember, TikTok is not a substitute for medical advice. If you are struggling or concerned about your own experiences, we encourage you to reach out to a healthcare provider. Learn about depression from trusted sources. If you or someone you know is in crisis, text TikTok to 741-741. So it does provide you this number that I do love because it's saying, like, although we can't help you just generally on this app, if you do text this number, you'll find more support. However, one thing that I find is that if a youth is going on TikTok to search up mental health issues, they already know that they're looking for trusted resources. They already know that they want support. So just saying learn about depression from trusted resources is not helpful. It's basically saying, like, if you want a drink of water, go get a drink of water. Like, you know, like a youth isn't gonna see that and be like, okay, like I know where to go. So what I wish they had done instead is create a hyperlink under depression with a bunch of trusted sources. Now, once again, this isn't something that can be federally regulated, so it does have to be a company-based solution. However, it is important to consider that a lot of these solutions are company-based. Instagram does a great job of handling this, as you can report your friends or even community members if they're posting about depression or things that may be worrisome, and Instagram themselves will reach out and say, hey, we got a report that you're not doing well, how can we help? Or like they'll provide a resource. Now I haven't gotten that, so I don't remember, but I have seen my friends get it because people will jokingly report each other, and then they'll see the screen, like the little banner come up, and they'll screenshot it and be like, who reported me? But there is moments where I think that is more beneficial than this banner. Continuing with that, once again, I didn't want to show videos, so here's kind of my executive summary of what I saw. The TikTok algorithm didn't enjoy that I was searching up depression, anxiety, and suicide, and it wouldn't show me any content related to those topics. Now, I found this interesting because everything else I searched up would be shown. For example, I searched up Hurricane Milton, that came up. I searched up like Disney things or Agatha All Along, which is a Marvel show, and that came up, and I would get tons of edits about that, or like montage videos. But then when I searched up things concerning mental health, it became reluctant to show me that. However, it did find a turnaround because more hope and inspirational content began to come up on my page. So I would get things like, you can make it out, similar to the Trump video. I would get other things related to that content of like an overall message of things are bad now, but it gets better. And then I also got a mixture specifically using the search bar. So I know y'all saw 2 examples earlier, but overall I got a mixture of personal stories, sharings of negative emotions, and hopeful content. So once again, while it can be beneficial with medical providers providing kind of a symptom list, there is also a chance where a student can see depressive content or people going through depressive episodes and find that they feel the same way, and it kind of turned into this feedback loop of like, I'm depressed, you're depressed, we're all depressed, and kind of losing that hope over time. Now, once again, concerns for me are that students may use TikTok to diagnose themselves. While mental health is super important, I find that it's also more important to acknowledge that we do need some sort of testing prior to saying that we have a certain thing, specifically because depression and anxiety are also symptoms for a bunch of other mental illnesses. So just saying you're depressed and anxious to everyone you know isn't very helpful. And it waters down those emotions for someone that may truly be diagnosed with that as well. In certain instances, I'm not saying this is uniform. Feelings of sadness can also arise. I know I already talked about that, but constantly viewing this content can create those sadness feelings. And even generally, like with Hurricane Milton, I felt sad during that time. I didn't know how to support these community members. And like I had friends who live in Florida. My uncle also lives in Florida. So hearing their stories and then also seeing the direct impacts of it was disheartening. However, I do find that it was important generally. And then once again, TikTok doesn't actively check on viewers, and it only really has that disclaimer on the search feature. So if I just randomly happen to see something that was labeled as hashtag depression core, hashtag suicide, or anything like that, I wouldn't really get that banner that popped up earlier. And then this is also including a new key term, but members also have stated that they get shadow banned, which just means instead of the application officially banning someone, it hides their content from greater viewers. And this shadow banning happens mostly when you use labels or discuss certain topics such as depression, anxiety, suicide. So it's two sides of the same coin. There's medical professionals that can't get their content out there because it has those words. And then there's people talking about advocacy that can't get those content out as well because it includes those words. And then there's also like the better side of things where depressive content doesn't get out there because, once again, it includes those words. Now talking about interventions, because that is so important these days. For Genesis specifically, really asking her about what she watches and engaging her in that instead of just allowing her to do whatever she wants is important. Having clear discussions about mental health is crucial to what Genesis experienced, because had anyone, now I know this was a fake person, so I don't know if someone did or didn't, or would have, but had someone reached out to her and said, I've noticed you're feeling sad, or I noticed you haven't been as active, maybe in the classroom, or even like on the dinner table, for example, is everything okay, or like what's going on? That may have stopped her from searching it up, and it may have allowed her to go to her primary care doctor instead. And lastly, advising youth not to share personal information. I forgot to show an image of this, so that's my fault. But I did label the account Genesis de la Broa, which just means Genesis from Broad Street. It's like a term we use in Providence to refer to Broad Street. So if we are seeing that it was a public account, say she comments on someone's post, she can easily get doxxed because everyone knows Broad Street, Genesis, Providence, Rhode Island. So there's certain things that kind of lead her to her safety being at risk. But once again, this all comes from media literacy being the solution. And in general, engage young people in research and policy creation is crucial. We've talked about this so much today. I won't really go into that. However, educate parents. I saw there's a pamphlet or a paper called The 5 C's of Engagement, and I love that. However, a lot of parents are not ready for that engagement. A lot of them don't know restorative practices or what it even means to have those discussions, and that's something I witnessed with my mom. I had to teach her a lot of the restorative practices, and like I had to do that push and pull of like, okay, we're not doing Snapchat, that's okay, can I get Instagram? And what does it mean for me to have Instagram? And having those open discussions and kind of dealing it with as like a business transaction of like, you get this, I get this. what can we both get in return? And that honestly worked for my youth. And once again, media literacy is so important because I know growing up for me, I got it during the coding section of our classes, and we were taught not to use our personal information, not to say where we live, not to even text people on the chats. But I've noticed that it's become the opposite now, where a lot of youth are looking for friendships after the pandemic on the internet. And a lot of them are engaging in like Discord servers, which is basically a WhatsApp chat sort of app. People are engaging on Roblox, and now there's a voice feature on Roblox. So they're using that. Call of Duty and all these other online games have historically been used for communication as well. So there's multiple ways that people have already engaged online. And then once again, experiment with different platforms yourself. This will allow you to kind of get what I got and really understand the issue from a personal level. So I know we're here to talk about the Kids Online Safety and Privacy Act and the Kids Online Safety Act. I wasn't able to read the Kids Online Safety Act to the best of my abilities. So what I will say is I really enjoyed the Senate bill. It had a lot of great protections over the addictive qualities of TikTok and these other algorithms. It included parent settings without being invasive and seeing what the kid sees. And it enforces more requirements for reporting. And if you are to report someone, there has to be direct consequences. The cons of the bills in general are just that it doesn't include media literacy. It doesn't improve parent-youth collaboration. Youth already engage in most of these practices themselves, so this bill came a couple years late, I would say. And then it also could lead to censorship. Once again, queer youth and BIPOC youth use TikTok, Twitter, all these different applications as a space for refuge and community. And when you start censoring things is when you start getting this information buried. And I've seen this right now with the issue in Palestine, where a lot of that information and a lot of those videos coming straight out of Palestine are being hidden. Now, whether this is because of their graphic nature, that could be one thing. It could be a whole variety of things. However, this can also be seen in any other topic. And then lastly, we kind of went over this, so I'm gonna rush through it, but really increasing funding for out-of-school time is crucial. If kids are busy, they're not gonna be on their phones. It's as simple as that. And once again, provide parents with different tools and ask questions and engage, as we've been doing all of today. But yeah, do I have time for questions? Okay. Thank you. Now, Dr. Kistin told me I have time for exactly one question. So, okay, I see. Anyone else? Okay, Eric.
All right. Hi, Marco.
Hi.
So I something that I come across a lot in like a lot of like social media feeds, particularly short form content, and I wondered if you kind of like came across this a lot too, are like people who like claim to be experts or at least speak with the cadence of experts, who like produce, you know, very easily digestible, oh, you know, you're in a depressive episode when, oh, you know, if you're neurodivergent if, and then they give like a lot of like very kind of like speciously reasoned like, you know, like ideas for like, oh, like habits that don't really seem all that true or like, you know, really like peer reviewed in any way. And I think it's kind of easy sometimes to tell because it's like, oh, you look like you're 19 years old and you're not even saying all the names right. But then like oftentimes I think there are very credulous people that, you know, do believe, you know, kind of the claims that they make and kind of like that need to like constantly produce content for people to lead to like not a lot of inaccuracies. So, you know, did you come across that a lot in kind of like this kind of experiment of yours, and like what do you think can be done to kind of like combat kind of like the constant need to make content regardless of accuracy?
Yeah, I think part of it, so to answer your first question, I did receive a lot of that where it was like 10 signs that you're depressed. And like some of them would be like you're sad on a rainy day. And it's like, well, yes, like I think that's for a lot of reasons. And once again, some of them, I will say, did not have a face at all. So that's one way to increase reliability, because if you don't see a face, you can't say, oh, that's a 19-year-old, they won't know. You can assume that's a medical professional. And like some of them will be like depression resources as the username. So there's ways people kind of move around that and try to get you to believe them. The trick is knowing that a lot of people get paid to be on TikTok. It's a surprisingly new industry, but people get like millions of dollars. Some of them don't need to work because they're on TikTok and their videos do well. So like you're saying, part of it is removing that financial incentive to push out as many videos as you can. And then another part of it as well is just for youth to realize that they will never find true answers on TikTok. Like you can get personal stories, you can get anecdotes, and that's amazing. But to say that you'll get 100% fact is not true. And that's even with any like research article. Like you'll learn this over time that you need to get multiple sources. But really focusing on that and teaching our youth that is vital. Yeah.
Marco, thank you so much. That was so amazing. I would love to invite our parent panel up to the stage right now. I'm really looking forward to hearing from these folks. This panel is going to be moderated by Dr. Andrea Spencer, and we are joined by Bernita Bradley, Dr. Iris Mabry Hernandez, Emily Martin, and Ramona Santos Torres. Everyone's going to take a little time, I hope, and introduce yourselves. I'm really excited to hear about your own experiences, but also about the parents with whom you work and the communities where y'all have been activists and like kind of reflecting on what that experience has been. Thank you all for being here.
Testing, testing. We're going to get started right away to maximize our time here, and it's a privilege to be here today. As Dr. Kiston said, I'm Andrea Spencer. I'm a child psychiatrist coming from Chicago and Lurie Children's, and have the privilege of highlighting the perspectives and voices of our expert parents today. So first, I just want everybody to introduce yourselves to the audience, tell the audience who you are, what organization you're from, and your role in the organization, and then also why is this issue important to you?
Hi, I'm Bernita Bradley, Director of Parent Voice of the National Parents Union. I am from Detroit, or located in Detroit, and mom of 2, grandmother of 3, community mom / auntie, and I will fight you over children. And I guess I wanted to give a shout out to our young people, because like I wish I was y'all when I was younger, right? Like seriously, like kudos to all of y'all for even having the courage to have the voices that you have. I was something like y'all, but not at all like y'all. So y'all are phenomenal.
My name's Emily Martin. I'm the National Parents Union Center for Parent Voice Associate. Bernita is my sidekick. No, I'm her sidekick. She's my boss. I am a stepmother of 4, and what else am I supposed to say? I don't know.
Why this is important to you? Why this issue?
Have any of the adults in the room, not the kids, have any of the adults in the room ever, like if you're on Facebook or TikTok all the time, have you ever taken a break? I took 2 weeks off. I deactivated my Facebook, and it was the best thing I have ever done for my mental health. I only had to go back because I have to use it for work in order to admin the pages for my job. So unfortunately, I am back on it, and now I'm addicted again. But if you have never taken a break, take a break. It is so worth it.
Is it morning? Oh, yes, still morning. Ramona Santos Torres. I am the Executive Director of Parents Leading for Educational Equity, PLE for short, based off Providence, Rhode Island. This issue is important to me for 2 reasons. I am a parent of 2. My youngest daughter has struggled with mental health for most of her short life, and also in my work as a parent organizer, one of the top issues for our families is mental health. the challenges that parents themselves are having, also, how they are seeing their babies struggle, to access to mental health, not only in schools, but really just to find a therapist, to find an evaluation, almost a year to find a neuropsych evaluation. So like a lot of those challenges we are seeing right now. And I agree with you, like the break of social media, yeah.
Self-care is staying off Twitter.
Good morning. My name is Iris Mabry Hernandez. I am a pediatrician, so that's one of the reasons I care about social media, but I am also obviously a parent of a high school senior, a boy. So it's, yes, very important to this topic to me.
Wonderful. So our first question today is that many parents around the country, as we've been talking about, are stressed about how to manage social media use with their children. And what are things from your perspectives that make parenting in the age of social media particularly challenging, based on your own experiences or the parents that you work with in your roles?
Well, it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. As many of us have said this morning, even as adults, we become addicted to this. So when you're thinking about children and adolescents, it's not shocking. It's hard to, as you say, take a break from it because you're encouraged to like things. You get that rush. Oh my gosh, I want to like things or post things. So I think just because it is so part of the culture now, you're thought of as odd if you're not on social media. So that's hard to kind of, fight and find that balance.
I find one of the challenges that I have is keeping track of how many different platforms there are. Listen, I have a TikTok, I have an Instagram, I have an X account, I have Discord, I have WhatsApp. There are so many that I don't even know of that my kids keep coming and telling me about. And I don't need more accounts, but I feel like I have to have them in order to keep track of what they are doing. Because they're not posting everything on every platform, by the way. And let's not talk about the fact that they have Finstas, okay? They're fake Insta accounts where they're posting their real stuff. Try and find those.
I think in my work, what we end up finding out through a lot of the focus groups, that parents really want to be more so that idol for their children. Like a lot of times we assume that parents are looking at social media as a platform to get away from their children, when really it's kind of like the total opposite. Parents are finding ways to try to connect to a generation of young people that they kind of don't understand, right? Even though they live in your household with them, right? And I even found that with myself when my daughter was struggling through her teenage years. Like the fear for me was, what is she posting? Is she okay? What is she going through right now? Like what do I need to do better as a mom, right? Or how do I connect to her? Because I recognized also at 54, my mom didn't connect to me as a teenager, and understanding like she probably wished she had a social media tool to find out where her child was or find out. So parents literally were saying like, I want to be that person that my child comes to. And if social media is one way that I can kind of engage to learn more, then that's what I'm willing to do. But still also recognizing that we have poor habits with it ourselves.
How many of you are parents here? Oh, wow. Humbling, right? You get humbled. And one of those, for me, in my personal experience as a parent, whose child really struggles with social media, just being on that phone a lot, that is the source of all of my issues. Most 90% of the discussions that we have is about that phone. And I think it's just like my inability to keep up with like the apps, the lingo, I just can't. And that's like, I do this for a living. Like, I have a lot of privilege to be able to have access to information, to speak the language. To, you know, my kids say I'm a boomer, but I can manage technology here and there, you know. So like, I could like open up all the 20 accounts, but how can I keep up? How can you keep up? It's impossible, right? So that's one of the challenges. But then when you really break it down, the language, like the language, right? But I think it's almost that technology piece. If you are, and I saw this during the pandemic when we switched, you know, to like distance learning. Some of our families didn't know how to, never used a computer before. And some of them still cannot navigate their way through a computer. They don't have emails. So like how, for them, you know, opening up that social media account to be able to engage with your child or understand why your child is looking at social media is out of the question. Then the literacy themselves, if they just are, you know, not literacy proficiency, like what does that look like? So we really have to kind of go a little bit deeper in, obviously for each community is going to be different, but I know that for us, we are dealing with all of those different, you know, levels of support that we have to provide to families, language access, technology access, you know, also, you know, I will talk to parents, like, you know, parents also need to learn how to have conversations with our babies. Because if the first thing that you do is yell at your child when you find out about something that was wrong that your child did, you know, that's gonna scare that child. I'm telling you, because that happened to me, I've been humble, right? So it's also how do we support families to like have difficult conversations with our babies, even when, and I call them babies because you all know they will always be our babies, even if they are, you know, grown up. But it's a matter also how we support our parents to have those conversations.
Thank you all so much. There's a theme about connecting and connecting with your own kids on social media and connecting with parents. Actually, the first time I got an Instagram account was because my kids' school was posting on Instagram, and I wanted an Instagram account because I wanted to know what was happening at school. So it segues into the question of use of social media and technology in education. You know, I was surprised that that's what I had to do to connect with my kids' school. And I wonder what you all think about not just the use of technology in education, but also how social media has become tied in with youth education, and what your thoughts are about that.
I believe one of the biggest fears parents have is who's educating, right? Because social media is one thing, but who's behind what they're teaching young people. We've had a lot of experiences where in our focus groups where parents talked about, my child's on a video game, like, and I'm thinking they're on this video game with a whole bunch of young people, right? And then I hear this deep bass voice with a 12-year-old, and I'm like, what the hell, who are you, excuse me? Like, who are you talking to, right? And they're like, oh no, that's my friend John. Like, how old is John? Does he have a mustache, a beard? What the hell? You are 12, right? And so parents are literally concerned with what you're teaching, who you are, who's the people behind the shadows that's engaging with our young people, which is why we go in and snoop, right? Which is why we go in and cut down and say, no, this is not gonna happen. Okay, you're off of that for 3 weeks, right? And then it becomes this tug of war between the child and the parent, because sometimes when there are the good things that's being taught, the parent is still scared. Because after all, we're the ones who's supposed to be protecting our children. And social media can never protect the child the way that a good parent can.
No, go ahead. Are you sure? Yeah?
So I am a proponent of teaching our kids to use social media or technology responsibly. Like, we're not going to shut down social media. We are not gonna get rid of AI. Even if it's bad or good, like, that thing is here to stay. And to me, like, how do we teach our, children as young as possible how to use it responsibly? Because we are not gonna be able to just like completely shut them off from the world. I think, and in Providence, we had this discussion a lot about the yonder pouches because, like locking the phone in the pouch doesn't address the core issue as to why your child's spending hours in that phone. What is missing there? What can we do to actually address the core issue? So like while I have all of the love and sympathy for educators and school administrators who thought that was the solution, we are still not addressing the core issues of why the child is like spending all of these hours. So like I would like to see how we actually, and it feels daunting when, young people share like we're fighting for more funding in Providence Public Schools, and this is the case for like pretty much every district in this country where we're like, where is the money to actually do the things that students need? So while we sit here and, we talk about all of the things that we need, like where's the money to, this country has money, so let me get that out of the way. So the money exists.
Yeah.
But, are we actually investing in the systems that can help our children succeed? Mental health, schools, social workers? Like that's where, that's where we're at. Like we have to really, if we are serious and we are in the main city of where these big decisions are being made and also at the local level, let's just put the money where it's needed to make sure that we get the outcomes that we want for our babies.
To go back to what I think you were actually asking with your question was, I don't have a problem if my kids' schools have an official Instagram account or TikTok or anything. I think it's a good way, especially if it's and it might sound a little silly, but especially if it's an athletically dominated school where kids are going to be going to college for sports, it's a good way for kids to be seen by coaches, which can be helpful, especially if kids need scholarships. What I have a problem with sometimes is the amount of teachers that come across my TikTok with their videos in class while class is going on. They're teaching. They're not showing the kids, which is great, but why do you get to be on your phone on social media, but we have a problem with our kids being on the phone? Why are you not as engaged with the kids as you expect the kids to be with you? So that's where I struggle. I don't mind if there's an official school account, but when teachers are filming during school hours and during class, that's where I struggle.
Speaking as a parent and a pediatrician, my trepidation is about, how does the exposure to social media, and there's so many different types, affect children as far as their outcomes, right? I mean, what is the research? And not only just social media, but just actually technology use in general. At least at my son's school, they don't have books. It's, everything's on the screen, and that's just jarring to me. But, and you're not reading and taking notes in the ways that we used to. And how does that affect the learning? So just, we're doing all these things, but we don't really know how it's affecting our children. And then things change so quickly, so, it takes forever to do research. I mean, so it's concerns me.
To follow up on that, do you all feel like you have a voice in regard to how technology is being used or how social media is being used in your child's education?
Yeah, most parents were clear they don't, right? The idea is that everybody always assumes that, like, just take the thing away from people and it's gonna solve something, right? Like put them in the bags or make the teachers keep them in a slot, right? But there's been projects across the country where schools have said, let's have some mutual understanding. Let's come together. How can we get the young people to agree that we agree we will not use these during instructional time unless it's for instruction, right? But allow them to keep what's theirs. I remember my daughter's teacher years ago saying she was going to take. My daughter had the police called on her about her cell phone. Had never been in trouble before. I'm in wherever I was at, New Orleans for work, and I get a call. They're saying someone has to come get your daughter, or we're calling the community advocate, who was actually the police. And I'm sitting up like, what do you mean? You're gonna lock a teenager up for having a phone in a classroom? Where is your problem with this? Like, why are you even feeling comfortable enough to call me like this, right? And I understand that you want children focused, but when you make it punitive, when in some countries, technology is actually advancing children so much further than America's children and quicker, it's a problem. And you're not creating this with young people or parents in mind. You're just creating this because you want it just taken out of the classroom. The other thing is that parents are very clear. My child needs this device for more than just school. My child catches the bus home at night. You're saying you don't want them to bring it in the building, period, right? But my child catches the bus. What if something dangerous happens at school? And the assumption is that children are just picking up cell phones saying, I want to film this just because I want notoriety. No, I'm filming this for my protection too, as a young person in a building. Or I'm filming this because I want to witness that my friend was not the one who started this, right? Or the teacher was the antagonist during this. So it always comes across punitive for young people when they decide to use something for their defense. And nobody's talking to the parents and the children to say, let's design a process together to make this work. We are. Well, we are. National Parents Union is, right? U of M Brown, right? But those other people aren't, the other people. Right? Thank you. That's why she's my sidekick.
It makes me remember why I got my daughter her cell phone for the first time, and it was for safety reasons. I am a single mom. I work 2 jobs, still work 2 jobs. And, I needed to know, and I am one of those parents who track where my child is at. So I'm like, very grateful for all the experiences shared here, but like I needed to know where this child was at all times because I'm working my second job, and that's the reality for many people, for many parents. And also like the school safety, I am sorry, but we live in a country where school shootings,
Yes.
where you send your child to school.
Yes.
Like, so that was one of the reasons. And I go back and forth regretting because, again, like the phone has been a source of constant issues in my house. But, for a lot of us, for parents, you buy that phone because you need to know that your child is safe. And it's tough, right? So we have to do a lot of work around that. Like we send our babies to school and they unfortunately get killed in schools in this country.
And nobody's addressing like take the guns out of school as much, right? Like just take the cell phones, right?
The phones are the problem.
I want to get sort of right to the point of our being here today about children's mental health and social media, and ask all of you what your primary concerns are with regard to social media and child mental health.
One of my concerns is just with how people, for example, I think Facebook's out of style for teenagers now, apparently, but so my son told me, but anyway, I guess Instagram or all these other things, but for kids and adults too, who see a certain type of lifestyle or what have you, and they think that's supposed to be what they're experiencing, and just this whole false notion of what life is and what it should be, and people becoming sad or despondent or what have you, because it's, they're not living what the dream. And then of course bullying is a major thing, at least in the olden days. When I was young, the bullying, which was bad then, but it was localized, you're done. But for some, not to be able to get away from it, through social media.
I think the perception of reality for our kids, even like that, those standards that have been set, both like, appearance and like this lifestyle, and something also like the incentive, like people make money on social media. On the days where I am just so tired of my work, I have jokingly, I'm just gonna go record videos on TikTok and dance or whatever I have to do, because like when you see some of the influencers make a significant amount of money. So when you are a teenager and you're watching this influencer who's living a life that might most likely is not the reality, that also, impacts, even as adults, right? Like I have bought a few Korean face creams based on some influencer, right? Even us as adults can get dragged into what, we see on social media, how that influences how we think life is and should be. So that concerns me a lot. What I have observed with Rachel, as again a young person who has struggled with mental health, is the isolation piece that resonated with me a lot, because then she gets into her room and that's it. You don't get her out of there. It's on this phone, and then the fight becomes, the fight starts. Like, okay, come out, let's do something. And K-dramas, as you saw my reaction, have been a thing where we have bonded. So I strongly encourage all of us to find that thing that we can connect with our kids that is genuine, that they feel, because kids will tell when we are kind of BSing them.
So, sorry. There's one more thing I wanted to add before that I guess concerns me, and that is, you have, particularly with algorithms, indoctrination, like the red pillars and all of this stuff, because I have a boy, so I have to make sure, he's good. But the fact is, it's very easy to go down a rabbit hole and, be exposed to certain, or, types, nefarious types. And, once you get in that loop, it becomes real to the viewer. And so that's definitely another big concern.
To touch on that, it's, as an adult, it's easy to fall down those rabbit holes. And my brain is fully formed. So I am able to distinguish reality from conspiracy theory. It's a lot harder for young people. But personally, one of my biggest concerns about social media is, or one of my biggest, I don't really know if concern is the right word, 2 of my stepchildren are queer. They're part of the queer community. And the bans that people want to put on social media usage concerns me, because that is where they found community, and that is where they found resources, and that is where they found friends who encouraged them to be true to themselves and gave them courage to come out. Now, it was never an issue in my household. My stepdaughter came out to me and she said, "Hey, guess who has a girlfriend?" And I said, "Oh, you?" And she's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Cool, can you pass the salt?" Because I was cooking at the time. Like, it just it's not a big deal in my house. And part of that's probably because I am from Boston originally, so I'm super liberal, I guess, compared to Pennsylvania people, which is where I live now. Anywho, that was my point was that is what I worry about with social media being restricted, is that kids will lose access to these communities that they can build. And it's not just the queer community, it's the BIPOC community, it's indigenous communities. Like, there are stories that need to be told out there, and these are the places where kids are telling them, where adults are telling them. So we have to be careful when we're restricting it, that we're restricting it in the right way.
I think we're at a pivotal time in life right now, where there's so much being created and there's so much autonomy, but also the risk of isolating people and pushing people back. I don't think we need to go back to taking away and banning and things like that. I think we need to push forward to designing together, right? Designing with one another in mind and making some neutral agreements that this is working and this is not working. Like, what's the wins and what's the losses? What's the takeaways? Like, we come together, we mutually agree that these couple of things are good, these couple of things are bad. Take away the bad, but then here's this sticky place that we don't know if we want to take away, or how do we agree? So here we go, shameless plug. We, with U of M, are designing a toolkit to give to families to talk about some of those things, like the SPACE acronym they talked about earlier, right? Like, what are some things we can give community to make community own social media spaces to make them safer, make it more productive, hopefully have teachers involved, people who are involved who will say, we're going to make these community agreements, and this is how we hope to move forward. And here's some suggestions for you, right? Because something has to be done, but just taking and isolating will never work. We know it won't, right? It's only going to cause rebellion. I'm for a rebellion. I'm for a revolution all the time. But some things, you know, like we don't just want to just take away, because again, we're doing a deficit. That's going into a deficit mindset where we have these wonderful tools, and they should be advancing. But we should be thinking about the pedophiles. We should be thinking about who's on the other side of that video game, what teachers are able to do in classrooms and how to make their classroom more productive. All of these things have to be taken into consideration. And the only way we're going to do that is if we design together.
Can I add something really quickly? We are in a moment politically right now where for the next few months or years, for the foreseeable future, where for like undocumented communities, for example, families that I work with in Providence, under the threat of deportation. So social media, it's gonna play either a critical role to keep people safe, or it's gonna just spread a lot of misinformation and cause a lot of stress for families and for young people. So I think that's something to watch. Like I am thinking, for myself personally, the only thing I've done for the past 2 weeks is doom scroll. Like I am just like, and that has impacted me. I can tell you that has impacted me tremendously. So I can imagine, right, for other people, how they are consuming the news, experiencing what's happening, how they're gonna be impacted. But then for the organizing world, for those of us who are gonna be on the front line defending communities of color and documented communities, like how are we using social media in a way that allows us to build and to make sure that people are informed, but they have the correct and accurate information, as opposed to fear-mongering or conspiracy theories? How do we help our young people actually, like, you know, go to that critical thinking exercise and help them, their parents, right? If I don't know about something, that parents can go to their kids and they can help them navigate what is real, what is not, what is, you know, good information or not. So
Thank you for that. I think that builds off of actually what my next question was going to be, where I hear you all saying that there are some good things about social media, right? There are some ways that social media can be used to connect. I also hear this really important message of restriction is disempowerment, right? And that we have to actually equip our kids and families to understand, you know, social media and know how to use it. And I wonder, you started to touch on how social media potentially could be a way to reach more kids, actually. And from the perspective of youth mental health, we are in the middle of a youth mental health crisis. And there is some interest in how social media could be used actually to reach kids and actually improve mental health and improve access to care or improve connection to communities that would improve mental health. But this would take a concerted effort. And so what thoughts do you have, advice do you have for anyone, but in particular, what you would like to see the media companies doing to help address the youth mental health crisis through social media?
So I think about the young boy who committed suicide, and his mom is now pushing for policy to say that when the AI bot was talking to her son, something should have popped up, right? Like something, there should have been a warning, a flag, something. I don't know how we say that parents, social media, be connected to young people's social media, what that looks like, but there needs to be something in the algorithm that flags harmful behavior. And it needs to go somewhere. That flag is scary too, right? Because then who are you flagging? Like, are you stereotyping people? Whatever, but something has to happen. And the social media, like these outlets, Facebook, Instagram, they owe this to our children. They're making a heck of a lot of money off of families who scroll all day long. They owe it to families to protect our children. They owe it, bottom line. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They shouldn't be off the hook. No, they shouldn't just be able to put up a banner that says, if you're depressed, no. there needs to be some tangible evidence that you are doing your due diligence to protect our families and our children.
Yeah. And to go off of that, the tech companies, the social media companies, these platforms need to ensure that the children who are using these platforms are of the age that they set. These most you can't get an account on most of these platforms unless you're 13. Please tell me why there are 7 and 8-year-olds coming up on my TikTok. Please. You know, and I understand that there are kids who go back and forth between multiple households. They need to have a phone. And yes, parents should be making sure that, you know, parental controls are set, all of that. Social media companies need to be checking and verifying ages. And it's as simple as that, because it starts young. Mental health, the impact on the mental health starts that young when kids are exposed to, they see other kids who have the latest sneakers, the latest technology, a nice house, a pool, vacations, and they are missing out on it because maybe they don't come from that kind of background. And that makes them think that they are less than, or their self-esteem takes a hit. And all of a sudden it turns into, well, why am I bothering? Well, I don't need to go to school. I don't need to study. I'm not going to ever have that. So it's really important to just to make sure that the kids who are using the site are using it correctly and using it appropriately. But they also need to make sure that the algorithms that are being shown to kids aren't adult algorithms. These tech companies can control these algorithms. We all know that they can. They can set age ranges. There's absolutely no reason if a kid signs up with an account and it says they're 13 that they should be seeing stuff for an adult. Set an age range, 13 to 16. It can be done.
I second everything that you guys say, and will say that we need to get these companies to donate, get their money, and watch how they right away do the right thing.
Yeah.
Start getting media companies, social media companies to donate money.
Yeah.
They make billions of dollars, and we need money, right? We need money for our schools. We need money for mental health services. So get these companies to start paying some of those $1 billion and watch how things change. And still like that, like, you know, you make billions of dollars off these babies and families, and you know the harm you're causing. This is not news for social media companies. They know, and they are continuing to engage in the same practices. So I think at some point, it's also about making sure that they pay a fair share for the, you know.
Forgive me, can I say something right quick? So you guys do know that like some of the social media platforms are talking about creating their own guidelines, right? And so them creating, that's like going to a bank that gypped you out of money and asking them, now tell me how you're gonna protect me in the future. Dude, no, you are not gonna do this legitimately right. So we as community have to push back, like the researchers, the parents, the youth. You have to push back and say, no, you are going to design this with me, right? And we have to get the government to understand like that we want this design with us. Don't just ban, don't just take away. Make them do right by our children and our families.
I mean, I actually don't have anything new to add because you all covered the bases. I totally agree, and I think it's about, the community, parents, every important stakeholders holding the companies accountable because they're not going to do things on their own for free. So.
And they're not being held accountable now.
No, and that's really what it's about.
We are out of time, but can we have a round of applause for these amazing parents?